The desert village of Kair was small, made of mud walls and narrow streets where the wind often carried grains of sand into every corner. Most of the people there lived quiet lives, raising animals, drawing water from the old wells, and telling stories in the evenings by the fire. Among them lived a man named Tomas, who was different from the rest. While others spent their days in work and trade, Tomas had always been drawn to the past. He loved to search through ruins, ask the elders about forgotten kings, and collect broken pieces of pottery that others ignored. Tomas was not wealthy, nor was he strong, but he carried a restless spirit. He wanted to understand the secrets buried beneath the sands. Since childhood, he had listened to the village storytellers who spoke of lost cities swallowed by dunes, of temples built for gods who demanded light and gold, and of crypts that no man dared to enter. One tale, however, always stayed with him. It was the story of the sun god's crypt, a place said to be hidden beneath the desert. Sealed long ago because of the power it carried. The elders warned everyone never to search for it. They said the sun god was not only worshipped but feared, for he punished those who doubted him with fire and drought. His followers built him a great crypt, filled with riches and guarded by curses. No man, the elders claimed, had returned from seeking it. Tomas, however, could not let the tale rest. Each time he heard it, his curiosity grew stronger. One evening, while the air outside was filled with the sound of desert winds, Tomas sat in the old library of the village. The building was not large, only a single room with shelves filled with scrolls and cracked manuscripts. Dust hung in the air, and the flame of his oil lamp flickered as if restless like him. He searched through bundles of old writings left by travelers and scholars who had passed through Kair many years ago. At first, he found nothing but trade records, descriptions of farming, and faded poems. But then, hidden under a pile of broken parchments, he discovered a scroll tied with a thin rope. The leather was dry and brittle, and the writing on the outside was nearly lost to time. Carefully, Tomas unrolled it on the table. His heart began to beat faster when he saw what it contained. Drawn in faded ink was a map. It showed the desert with symbols that Tomas recognized, the long river that cut across the sands, the mountains to the east, and the caravan routes that traders used. But at the center, marked with a shining circle, was a place unknown to him. Round the circle were small sun symbols, and next to them strange words written in the ancient tongue. Though Tomas could not read all of it, he understood one phrase clearly: "Here lies the resting place of the sun god." His hand trembled. As he held the scroll closer to the lamp, he could almost hear the whisper of the past calling him. This was no ordinary story told by an elder. This was proof that the crypt existed, that it was real, and that someone long ago had drawn the path to it. Tomas knew he could not keep this discovery hidden. He would need help to reach the place marked on the map. The desert was not kind to those who traveled alone, with the thought of adventure burning inside him. He decided to share it with the two people he trusted most. The first was Mira, a woman known in the village for her skill with herbs and remedies. She was gentle in nature but strong in spirit. Many times, she had helped Tomas when his curiosity had led him into accidents among ruins or broken stones. He knew she would understand his desire to uncover the truth. The second was Raul, a desert guide who had led caravans safely across the harshest dunes. Raul was cautious, but he had a sharp eye for landmarks and a knowledge of hidden wells. The next morning, Tomas met Mira at her small hut near the well. She was drying herbs in the sun when he arrived, and he quickly told her about the scroll. Her eyes widened with both wonder and concern. "You know, the elders will say this is dangerous," she warned. "If the crypt is truly the resting place of a god, then we may face more than heat and sand." "Danger has always been a part of the desert," Tomas replied, his voice firm but respectful. "But if we leave this secret buried, then the past will remain silent forever. I want to see it with my own eyes. I want to understand what really lies beneath." Mira looked at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "If you are set on this, then you should not go without me. Someone must be there to heal you when your curiosity leads you into trouble." Again, grateful, Tomas smiled. That evening, he met Raoul at the edge of the market. The guide listened quietly as Tomas explained the scroll and showed him the map. Raoul frowned, running a finger along the faded lines. "This place is far," Raoul said. "The sands there are wild, and the storms rise without warning. No trader goes near those parts. If the map is true, it will take weeks, maybe longer." "Will you guide us?" Tomas asked. Raoul was silent for a while, then gave a small nod. "I will. Not because I believe in your sun god's tomb, but because the desert is unforgiving. You will need someone who knows her moods, or you will never return." With that, the three of them agreed to prepare for the journey. They gathered supplies of water, food, ropes, and torches. Tomas wrapped the scroll carefully in cloth and kept it close to his chest. He could not sleep that night, for his mind was filled with images of golden halls, ancient statues, and secrets waiting in the dark in the quiet hours before dawn. As the first light touched the desert horizon, Tomas stood on the roof of his house and looked out at the endless sea of sand. Somewhere out there, hidden beneath the dunes, lay the forbidden crypt. The elders had always spoken of fear, but to him, it was not fear that called. It was wonder. And so, with a heart filled with determination, Tomas prepared himself. His life in the small village would no longer be enough. The desert held a secret older than his people, and he would be the one to uncover it. The journey to the crypt of the sun god had begun. The morning of departure came with a red sky, the kind of dawn that promised heat and long winds. Tomas stood in the center of the village square with a pack on his back, and the scroll hidden safely inside. Mira arrived with bundles of herbs tied to her belt, and Raoul came leading the camels, strong and patient animals that would carry their supplies across the desert. The villagers gathered to watch, whispering among themselves. Some shook their heads, muttering that the three were foolish to chase an old curse. Others looked on with quiet respect, for deep down, they admired the courage it took to walk into the unknown. One elder, a man with a wrinkled face and eyes like dark glass, stepped forward. "You go chasing fire," the elder said in a slow voice. "Remember this, the sun god was not kind. His hand was heavy, and his eyes burned like flame. The crypt was sealed for a reason." Tomas bowed his head, but his heart did not waver. "I go to learn," he replied, "not to steal." With that, they set off. The desert stretched out before them like a golden sea, endless waves of sand rolling toward the horizon. The first days were steady. Raoul led the way, guiding the camels through narrow paths where the dunes were firm enough to cross. He spoke little, but his eyes were always searching for sign shadows of distant hills, cracks in the earth where hidden water might be found, or the shape of a storm forming in the sky. Mira kept close to Tomas, her calm presence steadying him when the sun beat down without mercy. At night, when they set up camp, she treated their blistered feet with cooling leaves and shared herbs that kept their strength. The desert nights were cold, and the stars above stretched brighter than Tomas had ever seen. Under those skies, his thoughts often drifted back to the crypt. "What do you think we will find?" he asked Mira one evening as the fire crackled low. "Perhaps bones and silence," Mira answered, brushing sand from her hands, "or perhaps something that should have been left untouched." "Legends are not born from nothing," Tomas nodded, though in his heart he still believed knowledge waited for them. He could not imagine that the crypt was only a tomb. On the fifth day, a sandstorm struck without warning. One moment, the sky was clear. The next, Raoul shouted for them to cover their faces as a wall of golden dust rolled toward them. The wind howled like a beast, and the air became a swirl of choking grains. The camels groaned and struggled, nearly throwing their packs. They dropped to the ground, covering themselves with heavy cloths. Tomas pressed the scroll tight against his chest as if fearing the storm would snatch it away. Hours passed in blindness until finally the wind died and silence returned. When they lifted their heads, the world had changed. The dunes were reshaped, their path erased, and the sun was sinking low. Raoul studied the horizon carefully, his face tight. "We must move quickly. Storms like this make the desert unkind. Wills may be buried, and we will not last long without water. They pressed onward, but the journey grew harder. Food grew lighter, water skins emptier, and the map seemed uncertain. As the land shifted, doubt began to creep into their hearts. One night, when the fire was low and the cold sharp, Raoul spoke his thoughts. "We may be following a ghost," he said. "This map is old. The place it marks may no longer exist." Tomas looked at him, his voice quiet but steady, even if the sands have covered it. "The truth remains. I would rather search and fail than return and wonder all my life." Raoul said nothing more, but he gave Tomas a long look, as if weighing his determination. The next day, their path took them through a canyon where sharp rocks jutted from the ground like broken teeth. Shadows fell heavy there, and the silence was strange, as if the place itself watched them. At one point, Mira paused, pointing at the stone walls. Faded carvings were etched into the rock-sun symbols. Half erased by time, Tomas's eyes lit with wonder. "These are signs," he whispered. "We are close. The people of the sun god must have marked this path." Encouraged, they moved faster. Yet the desert tested them again. One of the camels fell weak, refusing to rise, and they were forced to leave it behind with part of their load. The heat was sharp during the day, and at night the cold bit their bones. But with each hardship, Tomas's spirit did not break. He carried the thought of golden halls and ancient knowledge within him, like a flame that refused to die. After nearly 2 weeks, they reached a wide plain of flat sand where no life grew. The air shimmered with heat, and the horizon seemed to blur like glass. In the center of the plain stood something strange, a half-buried column of stone. Rising crooked from the ground, they approached it slowly. The column was carved with images of the sun, its rays reaching out like hands. Round its base, the sand was piled high, as if trying to hide it. Raoul touched the stone and shook his head. "This does not belong to the desert's nature. It is a mark of men long gone." Tomas's heart raced. He unrolled the scroll again, comparing the drawing to the land before him. The circle on the map matched the plain, and the column stood exactly where the symbols marked the way. "This is it," Tomas said, his voice almost a whisper. "The crypt is near." Mira looked across the endless sand. "If the entrance is here, it has been hidden for centuries. Finding it will not be easy. Nothing worth finding ever is." Tomas replied. The three of them stood in silence, the sun sinking behind them and shadows stretching across the plain. The air carried a strange stillness, as though the desert itself was holding its breath. Their journey through the sands had tested their strength, their hope, and their courage. But now, for the first time, proof lay before them. The crypt of the sun god was not just a story whispered by elders. It was real, and it waited beneath their feet. The long journey through the desert had ended, but the true test was only about to begin. The plain stretched wide, a sea of flat sand where nothing moved except the hot wind. The lone column of stone rose like a finger pointing to the sky, its carvings half eaten by time. Tomas, Mira, and Raoul circled it again and again, brushing away sand with their hands, searching for more signs. Their journey through the desert had brought them here, and now they stood before proof that the legend was not only a story. Tomas placed his hand on the stone, tracing the sun rays carved into it. The grooves were deep, as if the builders had wanted their mark to last forever. He looked at Mira and Raoul, his eyes burning with determination. "This is the first step. The entrance cannot be far." Raoul knelt and pressed his fingers into the sand at the base of the column. The grain slipped away, but beneath them he felt something hard. He called the others, and together they began to dig, using their hands and small tools from their packs. Slowly, the sand gave way to reveal a flat slab of stone covered with more carvings. The slab was wide, too smooth to be natural. In the center was a circle shaped like the sun, and around it, words written in the ancient tongue. Tomas knelt closer, his eyes studying the script, though he could not read every word. He understood enough. "It warns us," he said softly. "It says, those who disturb the rest of the sun god will not see the light again." Mira frowned, wiping sweat from her brow. "A curse, then. They sealed this place for a reason. Tomas, perhaps we should leave it buried. But Tomas shook his head. If we walk away now, the truth will remain hidden forever. I came here to learn, not to take. We will open it. Raoul sighed, his expression troubled, but he nodded. Very well, but we must be careful. The builders of old knew how to guard their secrets. They cleared more sand, uncovering the edges of the slab until they saw it was not a solid floor, but a door. Rusted rings of metal were fixed into each corner. Raoul tied ropes to the rings, fastening them to the camel that remained. With a great pull, the animal strained, and the stone shifted slightly, groaning like a tired giant. Together, with their hands and the camel's strength, they dragged the slab aside. A rush of stale air escaped from below, dry and heavy as if trapped for centuries. The three of them peered into the darkness that opened at their feet. A stairway carved from stone descended into the earth, its steps narrow and uneven. The air smelled of dust, of age, and something else Tomas could not name. They lit torches, their flames flickering in the wind. One by one, they began to descend. Raoul led, steady and watchful, followed by Tomas clutching the map, and Mira bringing up the rear with her herbs tied at her side. The light from above faded until only the glow of their torches remained. The silence grew thick, broken only by the sound of their steps echoing in the stone passage. The stairway ended in a wide hall. The walls were carved with figures of men, kneeling before a towering shape with raised round its head the sun god himself. The figures were painted in faded colors of red and gold, though time had dimmed them. Dust lay thick on the floor, but no spider webs or insects could be seen. It was as if even life itself avoided this place. Mira whispered, "It feels like the air is watching us." Tomas walked forward slowly, his torchlight dancing over the carvings. "This is more than a tomb. It is a story written in stone. Look, they show him as both king and god." They moved deeper into the hall, careful. With each step, at the far end stood a great door made of stone, covered in more symbols. At its center was the image of the sun, its rays stretching outward. Around it were carvings of warriors holding spears and shields, as if guarding the passage. Raoul pressed his hand against the door and frowned. "This is heavier than the slab above. It will not open easily." Tomas studied the carvings. Along the edges of the door were small holes shaped like circles. He remembered the puzzles he had seen in other ruins, locks made not of keys, but of stones placed in patterns. Searching the hall, he found scattered discs of carved stone lying near the walls. He picked them up and noticed each bore a different symbol of the sun. "It is a puzzle," he said. "The door will open only if the right pieces are placed." The three of them worked together, fitting the discs into the holes. Some were too small, others too large. Each mistake echoed with a grinding sound that made them tense. Finally, after long effort, the last disc slid into place with a soft click. The door trembled, then slowly began to shift. A rumble filled the hall as dust rained down from above. The stone slab moved aside, revealing another passage beyond. A gust of hot air rushed out, making their torches flicker wildly. Mira gripped her staff tightly. "We should turn back now. We have seen enough to know this place was meant to stay closed." But Tomas's eyes were wide with wonder. "We are standing at the threshold of history. Every step forward is a step into the truth." Raoul adjusted his pack, his face grim. "Then let us step carefully, for the truth may not be gentle." They entered the passage, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by the stone. The walls grew closer, pressing around them like the ribs of some great beast. Their torches lit carvings of suns, endless suns, repeating again and again as if to remind them whose domain they had entered. At last, the passage opened into another chamber. Here the air was even thicker, and the silence heavier. Statues lined the walls, tall figures with stern faces and eyes shaped like fire. Their hands were raised, some holding staffs, others holding bowls carved to look like flames. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal. Upon it lay a golden disc, shining even in the weak light of their torches. Its surface was engraved with a single symbol, the same sun that marked the doors above. Tomas stepped closer, drawn to it. "This must be the key," he said. A symbol of the god himself. Raoul stopped him with a firm hand. Do not touch it yet. We must be certain it will not bring harm. Places like this were built with traps to punish intruders. Tomas hesitated, then nodded. Together they studied the room. The statue's eyes seemed to follow them, and the silence pressed tighter with every breath. Still, the golden disc gleamed, as if waiting, as if daring them to claim it. The hidden entrance had been found. The crypt of the sun god was no longer legend. It stood before them, alive with warning and wonder. And the true heart of its secret lay just beyond their reach. The chamber was silent except for the crackle of the torches. The statues that lined the walls seemed to glare at the intruders with stone eyes that never blinked. Tomas, Mira, and Raoul stood round the golden disc resting on the pedestal, each of them torn between awe and caution. Tomas leaned forward, his eyes glowing with curiosity. This disc is no simple treasure. It feels like the heart of this place. Perhaps it is a key to what lies deeper inside. Raoul studied the statues with suspicion. Or perhaps it is bait. The builders of this crypt did not leave their secrets unguarded. Touch the wrong thing, and we may never walk out again. Mira tightened her grip on her staff, her voice low but steady. If we choose to disturb it, we must be prepared for what follows. This crypt was not made to welcome visitors. For a moment, they hesitated. Then Tomas took a slow breath, steadying his hands. We have come too far to turn away. Whatever trials this crypt holds, we will face them together, with care. He reached out and lifted the golden disc from its pedestal. At first, nothing happened, but then the ground beneath them trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling, and a deep rumble echoed through the chamber. The torches flickered as the statue's stone eyes seemed to glow faintly in the firelight. Raoul pulled Tomas back quickly. You see, this place is alive with traps. Be ready. A grinding sound came from the far wall. Slowly, a hidden door opened, revealing a passage beyond. The air that rushed out was hot and heavy, carrying with it the smell of age and stone. Without another word, the three of them stepped forward, the golden disc in Tomas's hands guiding the way. The passage led them into a narrow corridor. The walls were covered with more carvings of the sun god, each showing him in different forms: ruler, warrior, and judge. As they walked, they noticed the floor was marked with strange symbols, each tile carved with either a sun or a shadow. Raoul halted, raising a hand. Careful, these stones are a test. Step wrong, and the floor may collapse beneath us. He crouched low, studying the patterns. The sun seemed to form a path, winding through the corridor like a snake. Raoul pressed his foot on the first sun tile. It held firm. He motioned for the others to follow. Step by step, they moved across the corridor, careful never to touch the shadow tiles. The air was heavy with tension, each step echoing like a warning. Halfway through, Tomas stumbled slightly, his foot brushing the edge of a shadow tile. Instantly, the stone shook, and sharp darts shot from holes in the walls. They whistled through the air, striking the ground near his feet. Mira gasped, pulling him back just in time. That was close, Raoul muttered. No more mistakes. This place will not forgive us twice. With greater care, they continued until they reached the end of the corridor, where another stone door stood. This time, there was no puzzle of discs. Instead, the golden disc Tomas carried fit perfectly into a round hollow at the door's center. He placed it inside, and with a heavy groan, the door slid open. The chamber beyond was vast, lit not by torches but by shafts of sunlight, streaming down through cracks in the ceiling high above. The beams of light struck golden mirrors set along the walls, filling the chamber with a warm glow. For a moment, it felt as though they had stepped into the very heart of the sun. In the middle of the chamber lay a wide pit, its edges carved with symbols of fire. Across the pit was another door, larger and grander than any they had seen. Raoul frowned. A bridge once stood here. Now it is gone. They destroyed it to keep intruders out. Tomas scanned the chamber and noticed chains and pulleys carved into the walls. The builders left a way to restore it. We must find how to bring the bridge back. They split up, searching the walls. Mira found a set of levers carved with sun symbols. She called the others, and together they studied them. Raoul tested. one lever carefully, pulling it halfway down. A section of stone shifted, and part of the bridge extended. But when he released the lever, the bridge slid back into the wall. "It will take all of us," he said. "We must hold the levers in the right order." They worked together, pulling the levers in a rhythm until the stone bridge slowly extended. Across the pit, with a final groan of stone, it locked into place. Mira wiped sweat from her brow. One mistake, and we would have fallen into that darkness. They crossed the bridge carefully, their footsteps echoing against the deep silence. The great door before them was carved with the image of the sun god seated on a throne, his hands raised as if to bless and condemn at the same time. Round him, smaller figures knelt in submission. Tomas placed his hands against the door, and it opened slowly, revealing yet another passage. This one was darker, its walls rougher, and the air thick with dust. As they entered, the torches revealed more traps, hidden blades glistened in the walls, and pits opened suddenly beneath their feet. They had to crawl, climb, and leap, their hearts pounding with every move. At one point, a section of the ceiling collapsed, nearly crushing them. Raul pulled Tomas aside just in time, the stone shattering against the ground with a thunderous crash. Mira's hands shook as she pressed herbs against the cut on Raul's arm, but they pressed on, unwilling to turn back. The deeper they went, the more the crypt seemed to resist them. Yet with each trial they passed, Tomas felt both awe and fear growing within him. It was as though the sun god himself tested them, weighing their worth finally. After what felt like hours, they reached a vast chamber unlike any before. The walls here were gilded with gold leaf, shining even under the dim light of their torches. Carvings covered every surface, telling the story of the sun god's reign. Tomas stepped closer, reading aloud what he could. He ruled not only as a king, but as a god among men. He promised eternal power, but those who followed him paid a price. His people feared him, yet they built this crypt to hold his strength forever. At the far end of the chamber stood a massive door, sealed with heavy chains. The golden disc Tomas carried pulsed faintly in the firelight, as if calling to it. Raul placed a hand on Tomas's shoulder. "We have survived the trials, but what waits beyond may be worse than all we have faced. We must decide carefully." Mira's voice trembled, though her eyes were firm. "We are already within the heart of this place. Whatever lies beyond that door is the truth we came for, and truth does not wait forever." The three of them stood before the chained door, their hearts heavy with both fear and wonder. The trials of the crypt had tested their strength, their courage, and their bond. But beyond this final barrier lay the greatest secret of all. The chained door loomed before them, its surface gleaming faintly under the light of their torches. The carvings of the sun god covered every inch, showing him as a towering figure with rays of fire around his head. In the scenes, men and women knelt before him, their faces filled with both devotion and fear. The chains that sealed the door were thick and ancient, yet they looked as though they had been placed with great care, as if someone long ago wanted to keep what was inside from ever being released. Tomas held the golden disc tightly, his eyes fixed on the carvings. "This is it. Behind this door lies the truth of the sun god, the map, the trials. All of it has led us here." Raul stepped forward, examining the chains. "These are not ordinary bindings. Look, each link is marked with symbols. They were meant to seal something, not just secure a door." Mira's voice was soft but filled with unease. If it was sealed so strongly, perhaps it should remain so. What if the legends are true? What if his spirit still lingers here? Tomas turned to her, his expression firm yet respectful. "Every story hides a truth. We must see it for ourselves. If we do not, the past remains silent, and we will return with nothing but guesses." Raul gave a slow nod. "Then let us open it, but carefully. One wrong move, and the crypt may swallow us whole." Together they studied the chains. At the center of the door was a hollow shape like the golden disc Tomas carried. His hands trembled as he lifted it. The disc fit perfectly into the space, and when he pressed it in, the chain shivered as though alive. A deep rumble echoed through the chamber, and the chains began to move, slithering back into the walls as if obeying a forgotten command. The heavy door groaned and slowly opened, releasing a wave of hot, stale air. Dust swirled around them, and the torch flames bent as though pulled by some unseen force. Beyond the door lay a vast chamber, larger than any they had entered before. They stepped inside cautiously. The chamber was circular, its ceiling high and curved like the inside of a dome. Golden panels covered the walls, each engraved with scenes of war, worship, and sacrifice. At the center stood a massive sarcophagus made of pure gold, its surface carved with the image of the sun god himself lying in eternal rest. Around it, dozens of smaller statues stood in silent rows, their faces stern. Their hands holding offerings of stone and metal. The sight stole their breath. Tomas whispered, his voice filled with awe, "This is no legend, this is the resting place of the sun god." Mira walked slowly round the chamber, her fingers brushing the golden panels. "Look at these carvings. They tell a story." The three of them raised their torches higher, following the sequence of images around the walls. At first, the sun god was shown as a mighty ruler, his crown shaped like the sun itself. He stood above his people, offering light and harvest. But as the carvings continued, the story grew darker. The people bowed lower, their faces carved with fear. The sun god raised his hand, and fire rained down on villages. Men were shown chained, women weeping, children sacrificed at altars of flame. Mira's face grew pale. He was not a kind god. He ruled with fear and demanded obedience through terror. Rawl's jaw tightened, and yet his people built this crypt for him. Why honor one who treated them so cruelly? Tomas studied the final carvings, which showed rebellion. Figures of men with weapons rose against the sun god, their faces carved with anger and courage. In the last panel, the great figure of the god lay still, carried into the crypt by his own people. The words carved beneath read, "Here he rests, sealed in gold, that his fire may never burn the land again." Tomas stepped back, his heart heavy. They built this place not to honor him, but to imprison him. They feared his return so much that they locked him away with chains of power. The three of them turned their eyes to the golden sarcophagus at the center of the chamber. It shimmered in the torchlight, as though alive. The carvings of the sun god's face were calm, but his eyes seemed to follow them wherever they moved. Raoul spoke in a low voice. "If this is truly his resting place, then disturbing it may release what they tried so hard to contain." Tomas's hand trembled as he touched the edge of the sarcophagus. And yet, think of what we could learn. The truth of his reign, his people, the mysteries they carried. This could change all that we know about the desert's history. Mira placed her hand on his arm, her voice gentle. "But at what cost, Tomas? Knowledge is precious, but some truths are heavy enough to crush the ones who seek them." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The flickering torches cast shadows across the golden walls, making the carvings seem to move as if the past was alive around them. Finally, Tomas sighed and stepped back from the sarcophagus. "We will not open it, not yet. We will study the chamber, record what we see, and learn from the walls before we disturb the rest of what lies inside." Relief washed across Mira's face, though the unease in her eyes did not fade. Raoul gave a small nod, though his hand still rested on the hilt of his knife, as if ready for the unexpected. They spent hours examining the chamber. Tomas sketched the carvings into his journal. Mira carefully noted the herbs she carried that might help against the stale air, and Raoul searched for hidden passages. They discovered narrow vents high above the walls, built to let small shafts of sunlight shine into the chamber. When the light struck the golden panels, the carvings seemed to glow, telling their story with new life. As they worked, Tomas felt both wonder and dread. The truth was here, written in stone and sealed in gold. The sun god was no myth. He had lived, ruled, and terrified his people until they finally rose against him. This crypt was not a shrine but a prison, and they were standing inside it. When they finally sat to rest, the silence felt heavier than ever. The golden sarcophagus glowed faintly in the dim light, and for a moment Tomas thought he saw the carved eyes flicker with something more than stone. He shook his head, telling himself it was only his mind playing tricks. but deep inside, a voice whispered that the secrets of the sun god were not finished. The chains had been broken, the door unsealed, and the prison disturbed. The crypt had shared its story, but perhaps it was not done speaking. The golden sarcophagus stood silent in the center of the chamber, but the air around it seemed heavier with every passing moment. Tomas, Mira, and Raul had spent hours studying the walls, writing notes, and sketching the carvings, yet none of them could shake the feeling that something had changed since the chains were removed. It was Mira who first noticed it. She looked at her torch and saw the flame bending unnaturally, not toward the air vents, but toward the sarcophagus itself. Her heart quickened. Tomas. Raul looked at the flame. It is being pulled by something. Raul frowned and raised his own torch. He saw the same. The fire leaned toward the sarcophagus like grass bending in the wind. He muttered under his breath, "The air is alive in here." Tomas tried to steady himself with reason. It could be a natural draft from the vents or some reaction to the metals in the walls. But as he said the words, his voice lacked conviction. He too felt the weight of something more. Suddenly a faint sound echoed through the chamber. It was like a low hum, deep and steady, coming from within the sarcophagus. The golden surface began to shimmer as though touched by sunlight, though no beam reached it. Mira took a step back, her hand tightening on her satchel of herbs. "It is waking," she whispered. Raul drew his knife, his voice sharp. "We should leave now. Whatever they sealed here, we are not meant to face." But the door behind them remained open, and already the chamber seemed to shift. The golden panels glowed brighter, the carvings of the sun god almost alive. His eyes, carved in stone, now seemed to burn with faint light. Tomas felt torn. Every part of him wanted to flee, yet another part burned with curiosity. "If this truly is the sun god," he said slowly, "then we are witnessing history beyond all measure. To turn away now is to let the greatest truth slip through our fingers." The hum grew louder, shaking the very floor. Dust fell from the ceiling as the golden sarcophagus began to tremble. A thin line of light split across its surface, as though the lid itself was cracking open from within. The three of them froze, their eyes wide. With a deafening sound, the lid shifted and slid open a few inches. A burst of hot air swept through the chamber, blowing out Mira's torch and nearly toppling Tomas's sketchbook. The golden statues round the chamber seemed to lean forward, their shadows stretching long across the floor. Raul pulled Mira close, his knife still raised. "Tomas, step away from it." But Tomas stood rooted to the spot. His eyes were fixed on the opening sarcophagus. Inside, faint light flickered, like the glow of fire waiting to be released. The hum turned into a voice, not words at first, but a deep chant that rolled through their bones. Then the voice spoke in clear tones. "Ancient yet powerful, who breaks the chains? Who dares disturb the rest of the sun god?" Mira gasped and gripped Raul's arm. Raul answered with silence, his body tensed. It was Tomas who found the strength to speak. His voice shook, but he raised it. "We are seekers of truth. We came not to disturb, but to learn. We only wish to understand the story of your people and your reign." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then the light within the sarcophagus grew stronger, and the lid shifted further. A figure began to rise from inside. It was not flesh and blood, but light and shadow shaped like a man. His body glowed with golden fire, and his head shone with a crown of rays. His face was both magnificent and terrible, handsome yet stern. With eyes that burned like the sun itself, he towered above them, taller than any man, his presence filling the chamber with unbearable heat. The figure spoke again. "I am Inti, the sun god, ruler of light and fire. For ages I slept, bound by chains of those who betrayed me. And now you have freed me." Mira fell to her knees, trembling. Raul stood in front of her protectively, though his knife seemed useless against such a being. Tomas, though shaking, forced himself to look into the glowing eyes. "Your people feared you," Tomas said, his words steady despite his fear. "They sealed you away because you brought fire and terror upon them. We have seen the carvings. We know what you did." The god's eyes blazed brighter. "I gave them harvest, warmth, and strength. Without me, they were nothing. Yet they rose against me. Blinded by weakness, they chained me in gold, thinking they could silence the sun. The ground quaked as his voice thundered through the chamber. The statues around them cracked, pieces of stone falling as if bowing. Before their master once more, Raoul shouted above the noise, "We should leave, Tomas. He is no god of mercy. He will destroy us if we stay." But Inti's gaze fixed on them. "You cannot leave." Once the door was opened, the bond was broken. Those who released me must now serve me. You shall carry my fire back to the world above. Mira's eyes widened in horror. "No, we are not your servants. We are free." The sun god's laughter shook the chamber, echoing like thunder. "Free? None are free of the sun. Without me, your world is darkness and cold. You have chosen your path. You belong to me now." The golden panels on the walls glowed brighter, filling the chamber with light so intense it burned their eyes. The torches were extinguished by the force of the radiance. Yet the room blazed as if the sun itself had risen inside. Tomas shielded his eyes, but he refused to bow. "If you are truly a god, then prove it by giving, not by taking. Show us you are worthy of worship." For a brief moment, the sun god was silent. His fiery eyes studied Tomas, as if weighing his courage. Then his face darkened. "You question me? Then I will show you my power." He raised his hand, and fire burst from the air, streaking across the chamber like lightning. It struck the golden floor, leaving a scorched mark where no fire should have burned. The heat was so great that Raoul had to drag Mira behind a statue to shield her. Tomas stood frozen, sweat pouring down his face. The god's power was undeniable, yet his arrogance filled the room like poison. As the chamber shook and flames licked the walls, one thought struck all three of them with terrifying clarity. The chains had been broken. The sun god was awake. And now, the world above was in danger. The chamber shook as the sun god's fire spread across the golden floor. Statues cracked, and the ceiling rumbled as if the earth itself was groaning. Mira pressed against Raoul, her eyes filled with terror. Tomas stood tall, though his knees trembled, staring into the blazing figure that towered before them. The sun god's voice rolled through the air like thunder. "The world above has grown weak. Without my fire, it will crumble. You three will carry my will. You will lead the return of the sun god. Refuse, and you will be nothing but ashes." Raoul tightened his grip on his knife, though he knew it was useless. His voice was sharp with anger. "We will never serve you. You are not a god of life. You are a tyrant." Mira pulled at his arm in fear, whispering, "Do not provoke him." But Raoul refused to bow. His courage was as fierce as the flames around them. The sun god raised his burning hand toward Raoul. A ball of fire formed, hot and bright, ready to strike. The heat pushed Tomas back. But in that moment, he acted. He ran forward, lifting his arms between Raoul and the god. "Stop," Tomas shouted, his voice echoing across the chamber. "If you destroy us, then you destroy the only ones who can carry your name back to the world. Think of it, for centuries, no one spoke of you. Your people sealed you away and chose to forget you. If you burn us now, you return to silence. But if you let us live, the world will know you again." The chamber grew still. The fireball flickered in the sun god's hand but did not strike. His golden eyes narrowed. Considering Tomas's words, Mira's heart raced as she realized what Tomas was doing. He was not begging. He was bargaining. The god lowered his hand, though his fire still burned. "You speak with boldness, mortal. You tempt me with the promise of remembrance. But remembrance is not enough. Worship is what I demand. My name must be carried not as memory, but as law." Raoul spat on the ground. "We will not enslave our people to you." The god's laughter filled the chamber, shaking the walls. "You think you have a choice. You are bound by the chains you broke. The sun shines on all. No one escapes its light." At that moment, Mira's eyes caught something on the far wall. Among the glowing carvings, one image shone brighter than the rest. It was a figure not kneeling, but standing tall against the blazing sun. Round the figure were carved symbols of balance, scales of light and shadow. she gasped. Tomas. Raoul, look, she cried, pointing to the carving. Tomas turned. His scholar's mind raced, remembering the texts they had studied in the valley. The priests had not only sealed the sun god, they had created a counterforce. The carvings spoke of balance, of how no fire could exist without shadow, no day without night. He shouted toward the glowing figure. You claim to be the only power, but even you cannot rule without balance. Night follows day, shadow cools the fire, rain quenches the drought. You are not all. You are only part. The sun god's fiery crown flared in anger. Lies. I am eternal. Without me, there is nothing. But Mira stepped forward now, her voice steady though her body shook. You are wrong. Your own people knew the truth. They chained you not to destroy you, but to restore balance. They left the symbols so that we would remember. You are fire, but the world needs water. You are day, but the world needs night. Raul's eyes lit with sudden understanding. And if you forget balance, you lose your strength. The sun god roared, his flames burning brighter, but cracks appeared across the golden walls. The carvings of balance glowed with power, as if the stones themselves resisted his claim. Tomas turned to Mira and Raoul. We must choose now. Do we carry his name and risk his tyranny spreading again, or do we seal him once more? Keeping balance alive, the chamber shook harder, dust falling like rain. Mira placed her hand over her heart. If we carry his fire, we betray the truth. We must restore the seal. It is the only way. Raoul nodded fiercely. Then let us end this, once and for all. The sun god stepped forward, flames licking across his body. You dare defy me. You will not succeed. I am the light eternal. But Tomas had already moved toward the glowing carving. He pressed his hand against the figure standing tall against the sun. At once, the chamber erupted in blinding light. The golden floor pulsed, and the sarcophagus behind the god began to close, its lid sliding shut with thunderous force. The sun god roared. In fury, fire shot from his arms, but the light of the carvings pushed it back. Mira and Raoul joined Tomas, pressing their hands to the symbols of balance. The glow grew stronger, wrapping around the fiery figure like chains of light. No, the god bellowed, you cannot bind the sun. Without me, you will wither in darkness. But the chains of balance pulled tighter. His flames flickered, his form wavered. For the first time, the sun god seemed weaker. His voice cracked with desperation. If you seal me again, you seal your own fate. You will regret this. Tomas shouted over the thunder of closing stone. Better to live with balance than burn under endless fire. With a final scream, the sun god's figure was dragged backward into the golden sarcophagus. The lid slammed shut, and the chamber fell into silence. The flames vanished. The statue stood still once more. The air cooled, leaving only the faint glow of the carvings on the wall. The three of them collapsed to the floor, breathing heavily. Sweat dripped from their faces. But they were alive. Mira whispered, her voice trembling. It is done. The balance is restored. Raoul sheathed his knife, though his hand still shook. Let him stay buried. The world is safer without his fire. Tomas sat in silence, staring at the closed sarcophagus. His heart ached with the weight of what they had seen. Part of him had longed for discovery, for proof of the god's existence. They had found it, but the truth was more terrible than he could have imagined. At last he spoke. We came seeking knowledge. We found power. But some truths are not meant to rule the living. Let history remember balance, not tyranny. Together they rose and walked toward the door. The chamber no longer fought to keep them. The golden panels dimmed, as though the crypt itself had returned to rest. When they stepped into the valley once more, the first light of dawn touched the mountains. The real sun rose gently in the sky, warm but not cruel, bright but not burning. Mira closed her eyes and whispered, "This is the sun we belong to." And as the three of them left the forbidden crypt behind, they knew their choice had saved not only themselves, but the world above. The sun god would sleep again, and balance would remain.